right, so morning, welcome everyone again. And for the ones that were here in November, this is chapter 2. For the ones that were not here in November, this is chapter 2. So the idea is today we pick up from where we left, but I'm going to do a quick recap. So we're still talking about data excellence. So we're still talking about the different pillars, and we've done this last time. We're going to quickly recap that one, but today we are focusing on this. It's going to be all about change and why it's important, what it means, what it happens, and so on. So, quick recap. We said that we were talking about people that are more of this new breed of data people coming into companies, trying to do a lot of things, a lot of different things. So we're seeing like a Swiss knife. We need to have a lot of skills and capabilities, experience to do that. We talked about a charter of data as the document that helps you to articulate, literally to verbalize and internally to your company what you're trying to do with data. So you're setting the good will. We talked about a domain model and the importance of data domains, but we're going to talk about more about that today. The importance of communication, how you land things, what are the picture you put in people's head to be connected to what you're trying to do. And we talk also about industry standard. I'll present you the ECAM, the Enterprise Data Management Council model that in my company, in previous companies, we used to measure maturity as a journey of things we go through. And we start from this. Today we start from, I don't think we have spent time on this slide. So we are trying to measure maturity. I know you remember last time the exercise was about, I want to know what my company is trying to do with a portfolio of things. So there is a strategy. The strategy is articulated in changes, in projects. I want to improve this. I want to get to a new market. I want to launch this new product. And you go and try to understand what is the component of data that you want to influence there. What is that you're trying to do? And what are your targets, right? But here we're measuring a bit more specifically when people are talking about what a data-driven company is. What is it we're trying to do really? So there is a maturity in the things you do in data, and there is a time, right? So usually you start from unless you're lucky, you start from what I would call a data reactive organization. And a data reactive organization is an organization where the questions are the only things you have. So there is a lot of what is this data? Where is this data? What can I do with data? Where does, but also from a business point of view, what happens if I do this? What is the best way of doing that? So it's a lot of questions. You don't have a lot of answers. There are a lot of people going around asking questions, and they're trying to use data to answer those. Then you go more right through a data-informed organization. You go to the famous data-driven organization, which for me is a place of statements. So I know what is this. I can predict what happens. I can actually trust. Trust is a huge, huge word in the world of data and generally in digital today. Because if you don't have trust today in a digital world, you haven't got a product, right? I only believe that your app works. I only believe the number is true if I trust you in the way you put it together and the way you're delivering to me. And I know that your reputation is a reputation of a person that does good things with data. So you want to get to this data-driven organization. But what you're trying to do is really to address, and we introduced last time the data debt, right? So what is bad with data? Why your data environment is not good enough? And there is a curve that you're trying to reduce almost asymptotically, because I don't think you ever get to reduce completely. And in reality, one you're trying to reduce, how you do this is increasing your data intelligence. I know more, I structure more, I understand more, therefore I have answers. And this path of increased data intelligence is what we're trying to embed in the change of the business. Are you still with me, right? Now, how do we think about that? It's time for change. And change is a constant of our lives as well. And I want to start from today. I want to start from reminding you what we are dealing with here, right? So last time I just flashed on the screen we're still working. I'm working on a company. A company's got capabilities, enterprise capabilities. We have an environment, a context of things, processes we're having, right? I'm not going to go through all of them because hopefully in your life you will deal with them in a more, in a more precise manner. Today, what we're focusing on two things: change management in the most holistic way, put in the meaning of the term, and control environment. You'll understand why. And I'll start with something that is closer to you probably. So let's talk about something incredibly not business related. You are finding yourself every day in your life in the attempt to do something better. Right? You want to better yourself. And over time, let's say you start from, I'm using Sigma as a letter, not by chance, it's not an accident. You will understand in a second. So let's say that I'm working. I'm trying to achieve a objective, and I get to this objective, and because let's say that I put a lot of change in my life. Maybe I want to lose weight. Maybe I want to be better at sport. Maybe I want to be a better musician, right? I put in my mind an idea of change, and I put an effort in better myself. So I get to a certain point where I stop putting effort in it, and then something happens. So I find myself with a goodness level that was supposed to be my short-term goodness level. I'm actually the best I could be, I think. But then I end up with something that is different. Over time, I'm actually having a lower goodness level. Maybe I was trying to lose weight and I gain again weight. Maybe I was trying to be a good musician and then maybe I don't practice anymore. So what do you think has happened here? What happened after you stop making an effort? Any clue? Yeah, but why?
Because our effort.
Right. So you go back to your old habits, right? If you are stopping, if you are eating good, now you're not eating that good. If you are practicing 2 hours a day, now you're not doing it. If you are going to the gym 3 times a week, now you go once a month. That's what happens overall in a company. So I work in a project, I spend a lot of money, put a lot of effort, and what happens? People are going back to their old habits. So the quality of the goodness of my solution is actually going down. So we're not sustaining the change, but instead what we want to try to do is to have something more like that. So I see something going down and I put some control. So I see you not going to the gym. You said to me that your New Year resolution was to go to the gym every 3 times a week. And coming Monday, have you gone to the gym? No. Are you going tomorrow? Oh yes, I'm gonna go. Oh, what are you doing? I'm eating a cornetta, I'm eating a graffa. Well, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Why are you having that? That's the same thing we're trying to do with controls in a company. We remind people of the good habits and we push them to keep the quality of my solution. Now, if you haven't done anything Six Sigma, that's the bulk of it. So you have a short-term Sigma, long-term Sigma, and then you're trying to keep the level of what you're doing at a certain heights. Yes, sir.
Do you remind the people of, is it practice or just when you start seeing the?
Yeah, that's what you want to go in control theory. We're going to get there in a second. So we're going to get there. And we're not going to do a fully blown control theory kind of lecture today, but I'm going to show you what you're trying to think and trying to put in practice to exactly doing that. So that's important because we are dealing with something that is hard already. And we're dealing, we said that the first time I spoke to you, and it wasn't even one of the seminar, but change is neurologically hard. Why? Because if you know what's happening in your brain is whatever is in your frontal cortex, there is something that you learn. Once you learn it, it's hard to put it in place, but then becomes something that your brain does more in a lower energy type of a form of a neuropath. So it's actually felt as routine. A routine is not only easier because you learned it, but also rewarding because that's what your evolution learned to do, because if you know exactly the path from here to water and you can go there without being attacked by a wild animal, is actually something that your body is trying to reward, because you are safety in your routine. So when you learn new things, it's bad for you, it's feeling as a pain. So when you're dealing with a lot of people who are trying to change the way they're doing things, so they're doing the right thing for data, let's don't forget that, that's felt neurologically as an effort. So you have to deal with that. You have to have that in the back of your mind. Not only that, but we hit people with a lot of new things. And I was showing this slide a long time ago here, but maybe it was almost a year ago. So we hit people with a lot of new things, and these things are scary. These things are actually transformed in a rejection. People are fearful of change because I don't know what my job is going to go. ChatGPT is going to take my job tomorrow. Maybe not. But what happens to my role in the metaverse? What is that is going to happen when these guys are going to be finished the new robotic project? So that's something we need to have in the back of our mind. So change is complex, it's difficult, it's hard. And also, if it wasn't only for the human aspect, which is massive, then you have a more of a procedural aspect, because nowadays business wants to change. Everyone says, I want to do digital transformation, I want to become a better business, I want to be data driven, you name it. So there is a assumption that I want to go from A to B, and go from A to B, I need to change things. And now businesses are thinking, okay, I need to put process change. Maybe today I'm doing this way contract management, or I'm doing this way customer acquisition. I'm going to do a different way. And finally, after 30 or 40 years of information technology, at least they're saying, well, I need to change my systems. Still, they are forgetting about the data. And that's been kind of my mantra when we talk about change the way you change, because although you might be now aligned from pillar 2, pillar 1 on culture is important, this thing, now you need to demonstrate that. How you demonstrate that? How you really make sure, and I don't know if you remember this slide, that the complexity vortex doesn't, interact with bad change vortex. So the more things are complex, the more I actually not doing the right change, and I create complexity. Therefore, I make more complexity. And these two things are conflagrating in something that's unmanageable. It becomes chaotic, because then you go and change one thing in your system or in your business, and an enormous part of the company falls apart because you didn't know. That's called regression, right? I didn't know. Remember I was saying about intelligence, data intelligence? I didn't know these two things are correlated. I didn't know that this system talks to this other system. In a complex environment, you can't do everything. So today is all about foundational capability. What is that I need to have in my quiver, like the arrows in your quiver, to manage this change? How do I orchestrate something that, if you look at an industry, you have the execution, that's the one we use in my company, another company. So you have what is that you need to have from an execution point of view? What are the foundation? What are the collaboration? But we don't go into the details of that. Let's boil it down to simple things. Someone, because of a change, and we're going to go into that, because of an ambition, let's talk about ambition. I want to do that. I need some data. So someone has to find it for me. Someone has to model it, prepare it for me. So then has to be provided to me, and I want to control it, because I don't want the solution. I don't want the data I give you, back from what I was saying, page 1, that people have, the souffle goes down. And once I give you the data, then it becomes something that over time is deteriorating. So that's the minimum that you need to have in place to break the vicious circle of data debt. Now, you notice this one. I'm not going to go in doing the architecture part, the preparation. You want to play with Snowflake, whatever, you do it, right? So today we focus on the things we really know we really need to have as a data team to make this changing, to change the way you change. Are you still all with me? Yeah? Good. By raising your hand, anyone remembers what was seminar 1 about? Good. I mean, right, let's start. Who's this guy? Very good. And Socrates was having this metaphor he was using, and in Greek, like you can read maieutica. Maieutica is Sophocles was saying, I'm like the midwife that helps you to have truth be born out of you. Maieutica is the ability to have really an understanding what is that you want, what is the truth that is in you. In this case, I'll use that as a metaphor to say what the customer really want, what the consumer of data really want. So there is a methodology, and it's not anything that you find in Prince2 or PMP. It's more like, how do I know? How do I ask the right questions to get the right answer? Why? Because that's the way I usually receive a requirement. That's what people are asking me, what they want. Can I execute a good data-driven type of change based on this requirement? I don't think so. What's wrong with this? Can anyone want to play at that? Okay. There's an everything here, too many constraints. And but I'll tell you a secret. When I was doing IT, I was hating when people were coming to me and say, hey, can I have this system? No, tell me what's your problem. Let me do my job and finding the system for you. Equally here, you telling me you want a Power BI dashboard, but that's not the problem, right? You need to tell me what you want. Because unless I understand what you want, I will never be able to not only answer your question, but even maybe wow you answering the question you didn't ask yet, right? And so what we're trying to do is to go to something like this. Now, this is a real case. I mask a couple of things, but this is a real case. This is the fruit of a lot of convincing that had to do with our logistics people to start to come up with something that is more like, hey, this is my story. What I call this one, if you are familiar with SDL, are you familiar with software development lifecycle? So, or agile development, you have all the stories, the user stories. A story is something that tells you in, human words, what is this all about? What is the ambition? What you're trying to do? And then what I was trying to do, tricking with my Maieutica, was tricking, okay, so these are really your business terms. These are really things we need to define because they are key to your story. How about, we might say facilities, facility. Well, yeah, maybe. Or plan good issue date. How do you want it? You want an hour of the issue, or it's just the date? So we need to know now, because I need to have an eye on what's going to be my execution. And what about who's going to manage that? So you start also. Yes, sir. Am I losing you?
It's not refresh.
There is a delay. There is one delay now.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was highlighting the business term with the the typical hypertextual thing. So we are starting to see and identify for them, oh, there is a selection you want to make here. There is a 3, 4, 5, 6.
No,
Okay. There is a calculation. Oh, okay. There is a calculation that we want to put in place. There is a frequency and a target. So what we do, we're trying to understand and to skin this and to create the right story. Why we want to do that? Because at a certain point with all of this, I need to go on a hunt. I need to go and find this data. And welcome to your company data bazaar. That's the kind of thing you have in a company. Over time, imagine a company has been around for, like mine or the ones I was before. Well, Lloyd's has been around for 270 years. Schneider's been around for 180 years. GE was around for 130 years. All of them, well, Lloyd's a bit less, but GE has been acquiring like 200 companies in 20 years. Schneider has been acquiring probably 40 or 50 in the last 10 years. So you know what happens when you acquire that? It's like you are, you're, let's use not probably, something happened to me. My grandmother passed away and her house was full of stuff. And that has been now moved because my mom wanted to sell that place, and all my grandmother stuff is in my mom's house. My mom's house was already full of stuff. Now I'm having a lot of stuff around, and I don't know. So if you're asking me, do you have a table that looks like that? I know I need to go and look at the 2-3 floors and see if I have that. Maybe there is one. Maybe I remember there was one. Same thing happens in your company. Some people will have an understanding where something is, but that understanding is not common. It's not a common data intelligence, because in the end, the thing we want to, that's one of the first capability, you want to start to think about cataloging. Why? Because if I catalog, oh, dude, where is my data? So you go from something like that to something like this. So a nice place where your library has got names on the shelf. And I know that if I go to, I want to see inventory data, I'll go to the inventory domain of data and I pick the data that was there, understand how inventory is actually defined. And I know that if the plan issue date is defined on weeks, because you can use week calendar weeks, you can use it's week. So I know that week 34 inventory date means something. And when I'm going to provide back my data to the logistic guy, it's going to be understandable. It's going to be additive of the intelligence of the company.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there is a real
Delay.
yeah. I think you should stop screen sharing just for a second and then to be sharing.
Okay, I'll go back because I can see the screen here.
Yeah.
And it's actually
It's a refresh.
Yeah, but the problem is
I'm on the same page. So the problem is quite erratic.
yeah, exactly. The problem is that I'm recording. I don't know.
I understand.
The final one.
okay. So the other way we can do it, we can start recording on a phone, and then you can add the synchronization. We can synchronize the sound. You want to record on phone?
Now it's okay.
Okay.
Good.
Right. And so where do you start to do that? How you start to be good at cataloging? Well, you start to look at things. You start from a logical way of looking at your company, right? So you start to have let's call it family of things or processes, whatever you want. It's to be logical to you, has to work for you. And you start to relate it to a business reality. So a customer has got a contract, a customer's got to buy a product is going to be shipped to a site. The site is something where the customer is, and you have assets that are delivered there, installed there. There is service required. So this is an information model. You can call it the mind map of your company. And believe me, already having this view, it's quite complex because, again, big companies are having big, realms of data, and even agreeing what sits in there as a customer, what sits in there in contracts. It's a conversation is tough, but it's a conversation you want to have. Why you want to have this conversation? Because when I have that feeling, that understanding, usually when I want to change things, I'm starting to say, oh, I want to improve my customer experience when I deliver them services. So having this information model is helping you to prioritize the things you do. Why? Because I know now that by families of data, by types of data, I can score how different things are. I know, again, having done my exercise of cataloging or working on understanding what is out there, I know that maybe the definitions in the area of contracts are not that good. Definitely having good definitions for the products. Maybe I'm still working a lot on what's sources of authority. You can define these areas, the way you score, how intelligent you are around things. And so when a project comes to you, when a change comes to you, when a user story comes to you, so you can immediately go in this and check, okay, this guy is trying to get this thing. So you can do two things. You start to say, this is a complex thing, so let's prepare for it. Because one of the things you want, the business will ask you, how much is going to cost me? And the cost, if you remember a little bit, the data debt problem is kind of proportional to that. Because if I know that I actually have no clue where the service is lineage to? What kind of a connection there is between the different systems that deliver service to me? Then try to do a change in the area of service. Maybe it's going to take longer. Maybe again, I might be bound to have some regression because I changed something here, something breaks. So maybe I need to do more architectural work there. So this is giving you, as a heat map, it's giving you an ability to say, preempt how much money I'm going to spend, how much difficult this is going to be, how likely, how many risks I'm going to incur. And risk becomes a big word here that we're going to discuss because it's part of our control environment. So that's another thing you can have, again, as a foundational capability. The first thing you want to know is, how do I find my data? Once I find it, I know that it's there. I will use probably the immortal words of my great-grandmother. That was probably, for me, was one of those, you know, those people are the repository of all the knowledge, the common knowledge of people. And she was using 3 words in our dialect to define good cataloging. She was saying steep cut rover, means put it in the right place and you'll find it again. And it's funny, but these 3 words are the fundamental assumption that you put in place. You have to be good at this capability. If you know what it is, and by the way, you have a good way of maintaining that knowledge, you will find it again. So the next people, you know what happens? I do a lot of work in now making the service lineage good. If I keep it in the right way, next time I'm trying to do another project in service, that block is going to be green. So I know that I've been already to there. I've been already there. I know that my intelligence is higher there. So guess what is going to happen? The cost to deliver the next project will be lower. Are you still following me? If there's any questions, stop me, right? Because no question is a bad question in a data-driven company. Right. So what do we do from here? Once I know that I know what it is, then I need to do something else, which is equivalent to software building for data, and is model building. Now, if you are familiar with that, maybe it's going to be a repetition for you, and I'm going to give you the basics, right? Because there are different ways of looking at this, but I mean, this is the way more or less I've been starting to look at since the last 6 or 7 years. So there is a need for you to model your data. Because first, as we said, data has got many different ways of helping your businesses using different parts of the company, but there is something that you need to do because it makes this more efficient. So you have to start first from the human level. So we need conceptually, and that's the start was the mind map I was showing you. Conceptually, we need to explain to ourselves and we need to agree or agree to disagree what this is as a human being. And I don't know if you recall one of the slides I was having at the very first lecture we did here, where there was the picture of a person with his face straight in the computer like that. I would say that's not the right way to look in the data. You can't start from the system. You need to start from the human. And in a second, I will give you a important consideration and justification why that is. So first, you need to understand what this is. We call that semantic model, conceptual model, call it what it wants. We need to just speak about data as human beings. That's why we asked for the data consumer story. We want to speak about it as human beings. Then, and that's the critical bit, we need to start to structure that data in a logical way. Why? Because one day we want to explain the data, we want to structure data, we want to put the data into a system. And most of our systems today are not, let's say, at the database level. Maybe things are going to change, but at database level, they're still thinking bits and bytes. They're still thinking something that is basically need a structure. And although you might have a GP, the whatever graphic database, but in the end, you want to have an ability to explain in a very system agnostic way what is the structure that defines that. So here I'm talking about customer address, and customer address from a logical point of view can be seen as made by address line 1, 2, 3, city postcode, and of course customer ID because you want to connect it. Once you've done that, then you start to say, okay, now I can play with the bits and bytes. So now there is a physical model there that describes which system is actually involved in that concept, and you connect, you start to map this to that. Now, which one is you think is the most, expensive phase of this? Which one is the most expensive in terms of hours it's going to take? Which one is the most expensive one? Conceptual, logical, physical? Which one is that? Any idea? Why?
The information and trying to sort information in the variables.
Okay, so the answer was because you start from the logical, there are a lot of variables. There is a complex structure you need to create, right? That's what you said. Okay. Other ways, other use.
Needs to be arranged in a fashion that you can explain it later and it will remain valid for patents.
Yes, although business processes are changing, so you need to be ready to change your logical model as well.
Yeah.
I'll say that the whole of it is very expensive, right? Because even from a conceptual point of view, imagine you don't start from zero, right? You might have your vendor team that has been working in isolation from your customer team that has been working in isolation from your investor team. And so they're having completely different definition on address. So it might take time to have them to agree. But I think the one that is most expensive today is really this lines here. So once you have your logical model, that I agree, it's complex, it's something that you don't have skills. Most companies don't have good skills doing logical modeling. By the way, maybe things like ChatGPT today can do good logical modeling. The issue is that where is that stuff in my system? That's very, very complex. Sorry, Giuseppe.
It's related to what you are saying, that we as in astronomy, we have the experience of building the semantic of the information difference. Basically, we have defined each possible value, holding subjects information. And that took 10 years to many people. And we were lucky enough because it was a math science where things are the unambiguous definition. How do you deal with these in work?
How you deal with that? You do exactly what one thing you can do is to convince them of one thing, and I'm going to show you now. So, by the way, I forgot one piece, which is probably the most important piece. This is the green piece. The green piece, which is governing. So how do I know that things are right here? So you need to start to put rules. So that's part of your modeling is that, do I know postcode is right? Do I know this system is in the right place? So there's a governance layer. So you can call it data quality, you can call it data retention, but all the things you need to put around in terms of rules so that this thing is good, quote unquote. But what you're trying to do is you convince of this, right? So I was asking you what's the higher effort, because I think mapping is what kills you when you go in a complex environment, because you have a many-to-many relationship. And when you're trying to find data, it becomes, so the inescapable truth is that as your sources are increasing in terms of number, the mapping effort goes exponentially. If you do just a system-to-system mapping, right? Because imagine it's permutational. So in my company, you have thousands of systems. Most of them are probably sharing a good portion of data. Imagine customer data is everywhere, finance data is everywhere. And so when you start to map every system there to create an understanding of what this is, or to satisfy a user story, a data consumer story, you need possibly to map and have a permutationally high number of systems. Instead, if you start with that kind of modeling, what you have is once you conceptualize what it is, then it's not a system-to-system mapping, but becomes a concept-to-system mapping. So you have what we call vertical lineage, because you have horizontal lineage is what you see in the data flow mapping, right? So, which actually doesn't mean flow, because usually you copy data. Data doesn't move, you copy, right? So You have a system, it talks with system, and it talks with system, and that's your horizontal lineage, which people are usually call it data flow. But what I showed you is the vertical lineage that says, of this concept, I want to know where in my systems is. And that type of mapping is actually a simpler and more efficient mapping than just saying where the data of this system is in all the other systems that might be. Are you following me? That's pretty fundamental point, because that's how you model data in the modern enterprises to, again, being faster and more efficient in the way you deliver data. And by the way, it's very difficult. And people will not welcome you with open arms when you say, oh yes, you want me to do that project. By the way, of all the area you're not trying to touch, you need to help me mapping it because we don't know anything about that. They will say, I don't want to do that. I just want to Power BI dashboard that does this. And it's difficult for you to explain, I can't give you the right Power BI dashboard that does that until we don't achieve a decent level of data intelligence, because it's going to be impossible for me to give you the right thing. And probably we need more data as data practitioner to demonstrate that if I do that, so if I just land into giving you the Power BI dashboard without going through this, it's going to take way more time and way more cost than doing this the right thing. That's a graph that helps me demonstrate that. Right, so we now model data. We go to the next bit and the critical bit. So this is going to be another time. If you want to play with architecture platform, you do it. The bit that I'm talking about now is how do I control? How do I control? And that's where risk comes into place. Remember, for the ones that joined later, probably you didn't see it, but there was a graph at the beginning, which we were saying, if you push and do a change, you do a project, you try to make things better, and you don't control what happens after, you are not on top of the risks that are going to make your solution degrade, then you waste your money, right? I say that you can use another old adage in Napolitan that says that the washing the head of the donkey, you waste money, waste time, soap, and water. But that's a different thing now. So let's say, but here, what you really want to be is to understand that one thing you need to introduce to control your environment is to understand risks. A risk is a completely new, risk management is a completely new thing that you want to add to your capabilities, because being on top of your risks means that you have the right controls. So what you're trying to do is going to stay, it's going to be sustained. There is a sustainability effort that you're putting here, because you don't want to have all the investment you've done basically being wasted. So let's do a few elements of risk management. I'm not, I don't want to claim that it's going to be a lecture about risk management, but I want to give you the way risk people are thinking about things. So what you're trying to do is to prevent an incident or a loss, right? You don't want your office going up on fire or your house going up on fire. So what you do? So first thing is you define the policy that helps you to avoid that. So you write somewhere saying, the typical thing you want to avoid in preventing fire is that you want to not having open fires in a building, or you don't want people smoking there. So there is a list of things, a list of is an internal law, bylaw of the company that says, I know there is risk out there, and these are the things we should do to avoid that. So once you've done that and you have a policy, you do a risk assessment. Now the policy said that, but where I am. So the policy said we shouldn't smoke in this building, right? But do people know? Do people do that? Is there a lot of flammable material in this building? Do we need to keep it in there? Should we keep it somewhere else? Are there operations that are done here that can create a fire? Is there maintenance work that people will go and work on electricity, and it's happening that the electricity cabinet is incredibly close to my physics labs that is working on gases? So you do a risk assessment. Once you've done a risk assessment, you work on prevention, because the first thing, prevention is always better than the cure. So I know that there are these issues. I close these issues from a risk point of view, and I start to prevent. So I create control that says every time someone wants to do maintenance in this building has to sign a sheet and then to demonstrate that they're not going to do something to put a risk of fire. I don't want Professor Longo to smoke inside, has to smoke outside. So just both. I don't know. But the pipe is the pipe up is bigger risk of fire. We know that, right? So embers flying everywhere. But, and of course, we know that sometimes we need to enforce things with detection. So there are preventive control and there are detective control. So I detect this of smoke and I know that there's an alarm there and maybe I need to check it from time to time. And then if the worst happens, you have mitigation controls. So you have also your very well controlled and very well maintained fire extinguisher then. So that's what, from a risk point of view, that's how you manage risk. Now, here we're not talking about fire, we're talking about something that I try to do with data that might create a problem. But the process is the same. The process is, if you think about what are the risk drivers in data, so what I'm trying to do is to understand what's the likelihood that my requirements are unclear. So I have a data consumer story, because if the requirement is unclear, the risk is that I'm losing my money, wasting my money, delivering the wrong solution. Hello, guys. Almost done. Huh? 15 minutes from then. So, so there is an unclear requirement, and in the unclear requirement might create a problem. Imagine, and I will talk about what's happening with it. Or again, my risk of delivering the solution is because I have low data intelligence, because I don't know things. So it's going to take a loads amount of time to find things. There is a risk that actually give you the wrong thing, right? Because you were asking for planned issue date in weeks and then giving that into months. So I actually, instead of giving you the planned issue date, and give you the completion date, which is a different date that you don't know. So also from a model point of view, we might have inadequate standards. I model all the things. In my data, I know exactly what should be. Maybe I don't enforce any data quality rule. Maybe I don't know that I give you the customer address and the customer address is missing the postcode. I don't know that. Again, it's the risk that creates an issue. Because if I'm giving you the wrong code, wrong postcode to the logistic guys, they're not going to deliver stuff to the right place. And again, maybe there is another driver, which is the places where my data is unsafe. People can access that and can, manipulate data, can change data, can extract data in the wrong way. And so you're having a risk that all of this is going to be vain, because today the dashboard is there, tomorrow the dashboard is no longer there because someone made a change and you didn't know. There was no user access control, there was no change control, there was no control board. You see, I'm saying, I'm already telling you the driver and the controls that you put in place. And finally, overall, the whole of this chain is not well controlled. So I don't know. I don't have a check to say, is this project has got a data consumer story? I don't have a check that data consumer story is actually good. Because when it's a story, how do you know it's good? How you validate that what is being told to you is semantically complete, is actually meaningful, and all of that. So, and overall, poor change process. So if all of this is not done because there is poor change capabilities, the whole thing breaks apart. And you want to know what happens when things are breaking apart? Well, it's easy. Risk is becoming an issue, because risk is the potential for a loss. Once you have a loss, you have an issue. And losses are financial losses. And if you go on the website, on the internet, you will find, this is the list of the GDPR enforcement. So everything, are you familiar with GDPR? General Data Protection Regulation. The thing everyone scares you with when you're trying to use data, so on GDPR, I can't do it. So that's. But I don't know if you can see the numbers, and the names, but Amazon, and this is public, I'm not saying anything. Amazon has been fined 740 millions. That's Meta has been fined 405 millions. So this is financial losses. Someone has done something wrong, and the regulator says, that's bad. Enforcement. That's because someone wasn't looking after the risks in data. The other thing that can happen is a service disruption. This is actually Twitter. Something happened in Twitter recently that from Business Insider. So someone deleted the data about the limits. Someone deleted the data about the limits, and so customer disruption. Oh, what's going on? Imagine Twitter inundated by Twitter because, well, it couldn't be because the customer couldn't do that. But you know what I mean. So that's service disruption. Is this giving you also reputationally problems? Yeah. But then when you go into the proper reputational damage, it's something like that. So this is a big thing that came out of the Citizens Advice in UK. Is a, I don't know if you have something here in Italy that is similar, but probably it's the Codacons, I think, is something like that. So it's a not-for-profit organization that is looking after citizens, so your right as a citizen. But they found out that the car insurance were unduly making a penalty to people that were coming from an ethnical background. So is this a problem with data? Yeah, someone did the wrong, put in place an algorithm that was actually advertently or inadvertently discriminating people because of where they're coming from and penalizing them with a higher premium of insurance. So you can imagine you have a bit of a reputational issue. So this is what happens when you don't take care of the risks that are inherent to what you do whenever you change your data, because your business is asking you to make a change or for the ambitions they are trying to achieve and to fulfill in the strategy of the business. Clear so far? Okay, we're on the final descent. So what have we learned? We learned that I call what we put together here to make change at different things and to make change cognizant and respectful of data. I call it the data excellence operating model, and basically follows the normal life cycle of a change. You have a demand, we call it now user story, consumer story, a data requirement, you have a design part, you have a build and so on, and you try to ask the right questions. You are trying to ask, what have you done this? How is it defined? Have you thought about your quality plan? Have you thought about controls? Again, this a bit more of flavors about quality, but you can think control environment is everything that you need to try to respect to maintain, like the privacy, the retention. Now there is a lot of the localization of data. There are countries that are saying you can't have my data outside of the border of my country. So how do you make sure that whenever you do things, whenever you help the business to do a change, the change is respectful of the data, but also is sustained? Because you don't want to go in the gym 3 times a week for 6 months and then spend the rest of your life in front of TV. Unfortunately, it's a change of lifestyle. We said that at the beginning, when we talk about culture, and if you don't understand that culture now needs the method, that's what it is. So conclusion, change is a constant in digital transformation. Actually, it's not even a constant. Change is changing as well. You can see the pace of change is changing. So there is maybe the derivative of the change is probably, the first one is a constant, but not change itself. Change the change is key to move toward data-driven organization. Why? Because you want to increase your intelligence of data. And how you do it, you put a bit of intelligence in every single moment of change, because you have many of those, and because the business is already neurologically rewiring their pattern, they're learning new things. That's the moment in which you want to have them learning something more, right? The data consumer stories are essential because it's the moment in which someone is asked to verbalize clearly, what is it you're trying to do with this? And if I know that, all of your capabilities are going to work. The data excellence operating model embeds good data practice during change. So whatever is the methodology of change, assuming there is one, what you're trying to do is just to add to the payload. You're doing functional requirement, you're going to do data requirement. And finally, data risk management or risk management in general is giving you that sustainability, that assurance that you're still doing the right thing. And in a very regulated world, there are a lot of people out there that are trying to understand and to basically tell you, you should do this. The only thing they really want to know is that, how do you know that it's still happening? Oh, I'm actually still respecting the rights of my data subjects. Yeah, but how do you know? Can you show me that all the data subject access requests that came to you in the last month were actually properly provided back to the customer within the 28 days of, the regulatory requirement time allowed and with sufficient accuracy. Guess what? This is a data question, right? So if you know, you can tell them. And so before we go to the practical exercise, and we're going to discuss in a second, and I hope Michele is already, you put it there, right? We'll take any questions because we're actually kind of bang on time on the hours I want to use. So we have 5 minutes for questions. Yes, sir.
I remember all of this stuff is strongly unsafe. Affected by what has been done in the accounting context and the financial.
What is starting? What is the?
I felt accounting context of the enterprise. I see any similar steps, for example, for this assessment. So now it's the state of for every other enterprise. It's management.
Yeah.
It's very important. You think like to know what is the pivotal difference between the data context and the finance accounting context?
Okay, so the question is, this sounds a lot, it's got a lot of good practices, I say, that might be already in place in modern financial and accounting approach. Yes. Yeah. Coming from the financial service, I can tell you, yeah, I've been doing SOX, which is the Sarbanes-Oxley regulation that came out after Enron crash, right, in the 2000. So basically someone was cooking the books. So it's basically telling to the markets, oh, I'm actually growing 20%, but that was not true. So finance is actually was there. And it's funny you say that because I think the first data revolution could have been done then. Because if finance has insisted and say, no, it's not just the process to create the statement that is to be controlled, but it's the data that goes into it. Because SOX was all about, am I controlling the process right? I know that because I've been there, right? Because finance really want to play with Excels a lot. So that type of structure that you've seen in the modeling, finance is a bit behind that. In general, I can't make a repeat statement, but to your point, what is the pivotal change? That I think, first of all, we should stop to talk about data like it's something different. That's my intention here, is that you need to be cognizant that it's something you need to add. But once you add it, the idea would be that people are tomorrow morning, they're waking up and they're doing the proper risk management of data as they're doing the proper risk management of finance stuff, as they're doing the proper risk management of, risk of, the production. So data becomes a dimension, but it doesn't stay as a thing. And I think what the difference between finance and data is that finance is the thing you do when you do business now, because it's expected. Data is the thing that the data guy is asking you to do, and sometimes you don't. So the difference is how much of this is going to be embedded in the next few years. So that's why I'm insisting on the culture has to be recipient of that. And then you need to give them the methodology, because you can't just say, you need to be good at data, because people ask you, okay, show me how. I say, oh, let's sit together. Remember yesterday you did that accounting transformation and basically you said data was out of scope? That's not allowed. You need to sit with me and tell me, once the transformation of the accounting processes are going to be finished, what's the difference from a data point? Are you going to need new words to define what you're trying to do? Because yesterday you didn't have a word for, I don't know, monthly Forex exchange. Now you need to have it. So we need to define the word. We need to put a logical model around that. We need to have it in a system. We need to control it. So the difference is that how embedded in the business practices this is. Finance is, this is not. But in a way, there is a bit of common sense, right? If we want to do something, we need to agree for that. That's what I'm talking about in the user consumer story. If you want that to be there 6 months after you're done, you need to have control. So yeah, there is a bit of common sense, but I think that common sense is not, the coin has not dropped yet in people, understanding that either you did this properly or you're wasting your money, you're washing the head of the donkey.
What's the current?
Current situation is a bit everywhere. I mean, it's difficult to make a current situation assessment. I can tell you that people are more aware. I can tell you that people are more, and I'm not talking about my company, I'm talking in general. So the number of, I mean, if you want to use data, use the number of chief data officers are now coming about in companies. They are sprouting everywhere. When I started, there were like a few of us, literally just in the financial services, and we're like a secret society of people talking these strange things. Now, if there are a lot of people that go into their CEO and say, well, we should do more semantic modeling, and they're not thrown out of the room. So we're getting there, but nobody's perfect in this. Nobody.
May I ask a question?
Sir,
You're talking from the point of view of a large enterprise. Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
your experience is about rolling the data excellence in a large enterprise.
Yes.
How about small enterprises? I mean, if they want to achieve, data excellence in their company, how can they do that? Because usually they don't have like.
no, you're right. And that's one of the problems. But what you've seen on the screens and what I've been talking about, data excellence, doesn't require an incredible, it's kind of proportional of your effort to what you're trying to do in the company. So if your company is small, necessarily the things you're doing are a bit more low scale. You don't need like 200 people. And in any case, I always say that if your data team is, breaching the 5-7% total headcount of your company and stays there, something has gone wrong. Because that means that there's not been really embedded in the nature and the DNA of the company. So I think the small companies can probably enjoy more services of a person, as what I'm now starting to call like a data personal trainer. Someone comes in and helps them to start. But then, as we were saying in the beginning, those change neural paths have to be wired properly. So when the trainer goes, they're still keeping on doing these things, and it becomes an exercise, becomes a ritual. So every time we do a project, we don't do just the functional and system requirements, we do the data requirements. It's part of the requirements. Every time we design a system, we don't design just the application infrastructure, we design also the data models. It's part of the so I think the exercise or the difference in terms of investment for the small company, medium company is a proportion. So if you are spending 10 in a small company, you probably need to spend 11 or 12. Instead, if you're spending 1,000 or 1,000,000 in a big company, then you're going to spend 1.2 million. But you see, the proportionally is the same. I don't think there is a big difference there. Right. Exercise or other questions?
I have a very small question.
Ah.
Concerning the time,
Yes.
because change is an opportunity, but you have to fix some kind of starting point and ending point.
Yes.
Because otherwise, if you change continuously and you change rules every time, and then you need some kind of time that you say, well, you require 1 year, 2 years. For 1 year, 2 years, you cannot change, otherwise.
Wow, perfect.
Not,
Fantastic question, Roberto. You went straight for the point. So there are companies that are thinking of changing too much. And I'm a sailor, right? No, I love sailing. And I always compare that when you have too many tacticians on the boat. So when you say, oh, let's go there, there's more wind there. And then the crew is maneuvering, and then there's a lot of energy going to maneuver. And then you don't let the boat basically start to go on that route and picking up speed and really making a gain towards your mark. And the other tactician, no, it's actually not enough wind yet. Tack again.
But it's also, I mean, it's a
by here-
kind of constraint.
It's a constraint, but possibly one thing that as data people we should start to do better is to measure the effectiveness of change with data. So I don't know if you probably missed it there, because I didn't talk about that, but you see the clause here, value realization. That's proportional to your time.
I see, in fact, it's a kind of, personally, I am a person that change continuously. So I think that it's the best way to innovate. But for a big company, you have to make some kind of time period.
Well, when we're going to talk the third pillar, which is the next one we're going to meet, and by the way, we need to choose a date. But when we talk about the third pillar, then we go into productionalization. So
Yeah.
what is gonna be the best rhythm for me to do this?
Yes,
So when then we start to talk more about agile development,
cycle of life.
cycle of life, you talk about backlog management, you talk about connection of the prioritization of the backlog with the time. So we're gonna talk about that.
Exercise.
So that's gonna be the third one, exercise. So I think something should have been delivered to you.
Already in the team.
Good.
chat.
So
If you open your laptops, you have the document preparing this exercise in the chat.
okay, so here is a simple thing we wanna do. We wanna exercise on the data consumer story, right? So, and the case is that you now are a fantastic group of people that have been hired by the University of Naples because they want to demonstrate to the government the value of higher education, right? So you need to group yourself, put yourself in groups, whatever you want to do it, and back quickly, and then not to spend many minutes asking, I want to go with my friend. So wherever you are seated now, the idea is that in the file you're having, there is a template. And a template is one of the templates we're using. It's actually a variation of the templates we're using. And we want you to come up with a user story that is supporting this method. So your user story should start as the University of Naples, I would like to demonstrate to the government the value of what we do. And we think, I don't know, that the best way of doing that is to measure how many kids are coming from a fortunate background, and they're making it to in between 0 and 5 years from leaving university, they're earning more than 50,000. I don't want to influence you, right? So, but think about what's the possible definition of the societal value of university, and